Hey, is this thing on? Lance, Nick, ready? Can you hear me? Welcome to the Live Free and Hunt podcast.
What is up, everyone? We just want to thank you for all the positive feedback we've been getting from this podcast. If you guys are listening on Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, or even Podbean and YouTube, hit that like and subscribe button. That would help us out a lot. Follow us along on Instagram and Facebook, and check out what we got going on. We're going to have some good media this year, and we just appreciate all the support from you all. Thanks again, everyone.
Live Free and Hunt, episode number 8. We had Neil Pendleton on. This podcast is obviously going to be different. We are all trying to do this remote from home, so we didn't have anybody in studio. But Lance,
what up? We're all on the phone and social distance thing. Yeah, I can't even speak tonight.
social distancing. Yeah, that's how this went. So, no, we talked to Neil. We talked about some scouting and trying to locate and
pinpoint mature deer.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is definitely something different for all of us. We're all just, FaceTiming right now and shooting the shit on the mics. See where this goes. It should be good.
I know it's different audio for everybody that's listening, but I hope it's good content. And we'll all get through this together. It's I know it's shitty for a lot of people, especially people got laid off, people staying with kids, trying to do schoolwork, trying to work. Everybody's in the same boat, but
just try to look out for your family, everyone, and we can all do our part, I guess, in this. So
we'll get through it together. But in the meantime, we had a great podcast with Neil. And like I said, talked about, locating big bucks, different strategies, maybe thinking outside the box. But yeah, it was fun. Yeah. So give her a listen.
Let's get in it.
Here we go. Boom!
Like a bad deck of cards that loves to lose. You don't listen to me, and I don't want you to, 'cause we sure have fun throwing my money away. You bet high, I bet low. You're all in and I'm all broke. Another paycheck down the drain.
All right, so we're bullshitting about old stands. Neil, just kind of go over how you grew up hunting and I guess, where you grew up hunting, I guess.
Yeah, well, I grew up in Maine. I grew up hunting with my father and grandfather. They're the ones that got me introduced to it. It's, pretty much I learned everything from my dad. I started hunting when I was 11 years old. My dad asked if I wanted to go out when I was 10, because in Maine you can start hunting when you're 10 years old. Right. I just didn't really have the interest in it at that time for some reason. So then he had gone at age 11, asked if I wanted to go out. So I started, hunting with him that year. And just obviously haven't looked back since.
That's wild. Whereabouts in Maine did you grow up?
I grew up, the town I grew up in was Belfast in like the Searsmont area, Waldo County.
Okay, yeah.
All right, yeah.
So after, you said it was 10 years old?
Yep. So that's when I was able to start hunting, but I didn't hunt my first year. I started hunting when I was 11.
Yeah.
And I went out with my dad all the time. I was into it and I was hooked on it. Because the opening morning I went out, my dad shot a buck that morning. I think it was like a 198-pound buck, and I was sitting in the same stand with him, and he just happened to turn over his right shoulder and shoot it. And from right there, first morning out, as a young guy,
right,
see one go down. It was
You're
pretty
hooked.
Awesome.
Right, yeah, that's awesome.
And it was a giant too. So.
Oh man.
When did you start getting like I don't want to fast forward anything, but I know I've heard you on a couple of different podcasts, so I don't want to copy that or whatever. But when did you start, like, obviously you've killed some amazing bucks over the years. When did you start just trying to find a buck in the woods? And then when did you start, just that's the buck I'm going to hunt? Or is that, I don't know if you do that. Is that a thing?
Well, I mean, I guess kind of how the history played out on that is that, as I said, like my dad and my grandfather got me into hunting. My grandfather, he was just big on, shooting any deer. He didn't really care about, racks for the most part.
Right.
My dad, he was always about, trying to get a nice buck. And living in his shadow, he always put me in stands. And so then finally, when I got a chance to hunt on my own at age 16, it was like, all right, I can go out and do it on my own now. It's like I kind of want to prove it, that I can be successful. And I didn't have a whole lot of luck at first. Even when I was making my own choices, I was still going to spots and areas that my dad had set me up with previously. So then after that, I mean, I'd gotten, a deer every year. I started off when I was 11. I shot a 4-pointer that first year. Then I had, a couple of, nice 8-pointers over the next, few years. And then really, I think it was when I got into college, that's when I finally had some success on my own. I mean, I had a lot of success kind of on my own, but it was, I guess, shadowing off what my dad had taught me and areas where he had shown me. So then when I was in college, I went to college at Plymouth State University. Well, it was Plymouth State College the first year. Then I switched over to the university the first year that I was there. So then
some nice woods up there.
There definitely is, yeah. It's a little bit of bigger woods. So I would always go out for walks with my dog. And it was in this area, like in the Campton kind of Holderness area. And so we used to go for walks up along like this one ridge side. So I'd always seen, a lot of nice game sign up in there. And finally there was, the night before opening day of rifle season, because I didn't bow hunt back then. That's when I went up on this ridge, found a nice spot, set up a stand, and then came there the next morning, was sitting in the stand. I couldn't really see that well from up in the stand, so I got down and snuck down the ridge a little bit. And as I'm sneaking down the ridge, all of a sudden I look down, and out steps this buck looking back up at me. And I knew right then and there.
Oh, shit.
I said, this is my first 200-pounder. I'm like, it's finally going to happen. And for me, it was a really big deal because I wanted to do that before my grandfather passed away.
Right.
Because he had always said, out of all of us Pendleton hunters, you're going to grow up to be the best one out of all of us.
No, that's wild.
So right then, just to see that buck standing there, I pulled up on him, made a shot, put a few follow-up shots in him as he went down the ridge. When I got up to him and put my, hands on his rack and just kind of felt the weight of him, I knew that I'd finally done it. And that was 209 pounds. So that was the first day and probably about the first hour I ever hunted in New Hampshire. I was finally able to get it done.
Jesus Christ. I've been trying.
Holy shit.
I've been trying for years.
So I started off pretty good in New Hampshire.
Yeah, absolutely. God.
So you grew up hunting in Mass?
I grew up in Maine.
Oh, sorry. I don't know why I said Mass.
We're talking about hunting Mass earlier, so yeah.
Yeah.
Dang.
No, yeah, I grew up in Maine, and so then that was the first year that I ever hunted in New Hampshire. I didn't hunt a lot when I was in college. I would go up to my dad's cabin up in Maine, hunt up there for a few days or a week every year. And then after that, in 2010, that's when I really started hunting more in southern New Hampshire because I was living in Merrimack, New Hampshire, and I ended up getting into archery hunting.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask you. Yeah.
I wanted to have a longer season, more time.
Yeah.
It really hadn't interested me a whole lot. But then at that point, I said, okay, I get a chance to start September 15th versus waiting till, essentially November, I think it was.
Right.
And then after that, in 2011 is when I really made the transition to big bucks because I happened to get pictures of an absolute giant. And I'm sure you guys have seen him, the deer that I killed in 2015.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that deer have a name?
There was a nickname that was associated with it. His nickname was, Daniel. But that was from one of my buddies. He had kind of nicknamed him that. I never really necessarily had a name for him. I haven't been huge on naming deer before.
Right.
But that one, I always just called him Big Boy or Plan A or something like that.
Yeah.
Plan A.
He's such a freak.
Oh my God.
Watch the video. I'll try to post pictures and videos after. And but the video sent of the trail cam pictures and how it all fell through, man, it is fucking crazy. I mean, you look at that deer and you think there's no way that's ever going to be in New Hampshire. And if you want, before we get into, I definitely want to get into scouting and shit, but you've probably told this story 1,000 times, but I'd like to. Well, if I post pictures, I would like to, hear the story on that buck.
Yeah, I mean, that buck, it was pretty much, I happened to, as you said, be shocked as hell that I got pictures of this absolute giant in southern New Hampshire. I didn't expect it at all. I figured you had to end up hunting the big woods of Maine to end up, seeing a deer of that caliber.
Right.
And so when I found that deer in southern New Hampshire, it just absolutely blew my mind. And I got weak in the knees from the first trail camera picture I saw.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And the weird thing is it was how many days you hunted him?
So it was 1,490 days.
1,000.
So it was a long saga over 5 seasons, got tons of trail camera pictures, had a lot of close calls. And, I mean, I think that is what really turned me into being a successful hunter, is having a buck like that I could learn from for that long and try to hone in on and try to figure out how to expand the search and, what he was doing and how he acted different than any other deer that was in the woods.
Yeah. See, that's what's strange. And I'm probably going to, you should have never gave me your number because I'm going to pick your brain all the time now. Ever since we had
I love talking hunter.
Yeah, ever since we had Kevin on, he mentioned something and it was like, oh, you know what? That makes sense. But yeah, I mean, I assume hunting a deer like that, if I had something like that on camera, I would also be just balls to the wall. That's what I'm doing. I'm hunting this deer. That's it. And, figuring them out. So,
I mean, it literally haunts you. It's, it's an amazing opportunity. And I hope every hunter gets that chance to have, to have the opportunity to even think of hunting a buck like that, but let alone to have that much history.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it was quite an honor. It's like, and then it's like, okay, like you can't stop thinking about it. I'd be out in July in a boat fishing, and all I could do is think about, wow, this is a giant buck. It's like,
what's he doing?
Right now?
Right,
like,
exactly.
What can I do differently this season?
Yeah.
Now, scouting. When you start off scouting, do you just go on the map on your phone and look at pieces that way, or do you do some more drive-in, hiking, or for southern New Hampshire, what do you usually start off with if you're looking for a new piece?
Yeah, so with that, I mean, it's really kind of some of the things you said is, looking at maps, and that's where I start, whether it's, just sitting around, in my spare time, whether it's in season, sitting in the stand, I end up just studying maps. Now I use Onyx. I don't know if you guys use Onyx.
Yeah.
I have in the past.
Yep, because I'll look on Google Maps, but I also go on Onyx and just look for all those different areas where it's like, okay, I haven't been here, what's there, whether it's pinch points, whether it's, looking at terrain features on a map, and then also drive around. So it's getting in the truck, driving over to a spot and trying to, drive the perimeters to figure out where people could park and trying to find spots that would be hard for people to access, because you could have a big piece of woods or even a small pocket of woods, and it's trying to say, like, okay, like, where could a hunter not go? Because if a hunter is going to have a hard time getting in there, that's more likely to have a big buck that's there.
Right.
That makes pretty good sense. If it's harder to get into, then, you'll be better off being left alone.
Do you feel like those small pockets of woods hold bigger bucks all the time, or is it just you just have to find the right spot? It's tough for me because I've never really hunted southern New Hampshire a whole lot, like a few times, but I know when I went down there, it's like people driving, doing pushes or drives to the woods. So I could never, I don't know if I'd ever waste the time to put up a tree stand, but the way you're explaining it is like perfect. It's like find that spot that that no one wants to go into. So is it different if you go into a small pocket of woods, right? You think that people are going to be driving through it, or you just walk in, see the buck sign, and be like, okay, this is legit. Put a camera up.
I mean, so that's where a lot of the spots where I've actually had success have been in bigger pieces of woods. But they could be in areas where it's like it transitions to those small pockets. So when I look at a map and I dissect it, I'm trying to look at the bigger picture. It's not just like where, okay, I found, scrapes and rubs over here,
right.
Or I happen to get a picture of a buck. And I think, using cameras and first getting pictures of a buck is probably where I start. Obviously I'll walk different, pieces of woods. I'll go ahead and put out cameras, look for scrapes, and try to find sign, but then I'll also try to look and see, okay, where is there not, other tree stands? Where is there not other hunters? And then I'll also try to look for, it's like, is there a bunch of houses along this road that there isn't a spot to pull over and park?
Right.
Unless some guy is going out of his backyard which if that's the case, I'm probably going to find a stand somewhere close, to where his house is. He may have other stands that have branched out from there, but at least when you kind of walk the perimeter of a piece of woods, if it's a big square, well, don't just cut into the middle and start walking around. I'll literally just do a circle on the outside of that square first, or I guess the inside of the square, I guess.
Just to
and then from
check
there, I'll kind of learn what the perimeters look like, and then I can say, okay, if there's too many people that are hunting there, just go to another spot. Or it's, okay, I'm seeing, good sign here down in this corner, but I'm looking at the map. Sometimes if it's during the season and I don't have a lot of time and I just want to try to find a new spot to maybe set up and hunt, what I'll end up doing is I'll look at where that one square branches off and has a finger that may connect to another piece of woods, because that's going to be a transition area from one piece of woods where they're crossing a road coming into another piece.
So when it gets pressured with everything, that's the escape route. That's where they're going to be heading.
Yeah, I mean, it could be for pressure. It could be just for changing food sources. It could be because they're bedding in one area, coming to feed at another. They're going to check on different doe groups.
Yeah.
But that's one thing about, mature bucks is they have, for the most part, a decent range where they travel. And I think that's where back in, 2011 with that, first buck that I learned so much from, that was, for him, it was I focused on that one spot where I got pictures of him and I got tunnel vision. And that screwed me for, probably the first season or two of hunting him, because that's the only spot where I ever wanted to hunt him. I didn't want to leave that one stand.
No, I hear you. It's fucking crazy you say it, because we did the same thing, and we do it.
Yeah.
And it's like,
tunnel vision on that.
you see him in the, bear season-ish, maybe before archery season a little bit, summertime pictures. Then all of a sudden you're like, you don't see pictures of him. Well, he's got to be here, and then he'll make like a appearance here and there, and then be gone. But like you're saying, I know I can think about food sources and food. It's happened to me every year. I've been in a stand being like, all right, well, I have pictures of him, and a week ago he was here, but then it goes back to, well, there's no acorns here, or like, what the fuck? Where did it go? All of a sudden he's gone, and I know summer patterns change, and, it's not the rut that's happening, but for whatever reason, he never comes back, and we have three good bucks that have done that. I don't know if we have a picture of him this year, but how, I guess when you're looking into a place and you have a summertime pictures of a buck, what do you think that is? Is that like where he's going to hang out most of the time? And then what happens when the food source changes, and then come hunting season, what do you do?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I think that's where, so if you're talking that if there's a deer that had history with, right, that changes everything, because if I happen to get, velvet summertime pictures of a really, really nice buck,
yeah,
then it's like, okay, like he's probably not going to stay there. I mean, we've all seen they move and they shift, right? Once that velvet comes off, they usually go somewhere else, or they start, bopping around all different places. Mm-hmm. So they're probably not going to stay right there. So I almost, if I find like summertime velvet pictures, unless it's within that first kind of week of the season, which I haven't been good at. I mean, the earliest that I've killed a mature, giant buck has been October 4th. That one that I, killed at the beginning of this hunting season.
Yeah.
So it's one that, I've started to get better in the early season. I've had, what I feel, like good enough close calls now that I'm starting to build up confidence there. But it's because of the fact that I hadn't figured out those early season food sources are kind of where they transition to. But yeah, I don't really count that that's where they're going to be. So that's where, when it comes to cameras, you can, as I said, you can kind of draw a radius around it, whether it's 2 miles, 3 miles, 5 miles. The bigger the woods, the bigger the range. Like for instance, the buck that I killed with a rifle in Maine this year, one of the guys we know that hunts up there, he had pictures of that same buck, a straight line 9 miles away the season before.
Jesus. So he's not even in the same area.
In a big
area. He's hanging out wherever the hell he wants to.
Well, that was the year before. If somebody had gotten pictures of him and said, okay, like, I have a picture of this buck, I want to hunt him. Well, he was friggin' 9 miles straight line. He had to go around lakes and over mountains and ridges and all this other shit to go from one point to another. So it's one of those that in the bigger the woods, the bigger the ranges are. So it's really hard to hone in on it. But the annual patterns, that is one thing that I've noticed with hunting, a couple of these bucks for many, many years, that they're going to do almost the same thing almost every year within a couple of days, usually even.
So
Oh, wow, no shit.
we ran into that same scenario. Is the buck that we were hunting, and all of a sudden he is popped off. He's gone. We moved down to a lower piece into a swamp. I put a camera out because it was just tore up in there. And then all of a sudden, it's like all the bucks that we had that were maybe a mile, 2 miles down the road, were all of a sudden, when the leaves dropped, we got some of the same bucks potentially on that camera, and it's like they just flock to this place. So it blows my mind trying to play the game of hide and seek with these fuckers because I never win.
Yeah.
It's tough.
And that's where, it is true. It's like, that once you start to put those pieces of the puzzle together, you start to learn stuff through experience. It does get, easier. That is
right.
One thing that I'll say. Because I look back to, as you said, I've been on some other podcasts. It's like when I killed that buck in 2015, like back after killing him, what I knew then is like, it seems like, a long ways away from what I know now.
Right.
Just because of what I've learned since then when it comes to how to apply stuff. It's like, so, even, when it comes to, it's like, one thing that I, kind of, thought about is that, we talked about the seasons, right?
Yeah.
It's like you have like, the early season, you have, it's like October. Then from there, it's like, when I feel like in October, they talk about the lull sometimes. It's usually just because bucks are staying more like in their safe zone during that time, the time of the year. And they're kind of ramping up before, the rut starts and they start, laying down all kinds of scrapes and rubs. And that's when obviously the rut, that's when, obviously bucks are vulnerable and most guys shoot them. It's during the rut time frame.
Yeah.
So that's where I try to find, it's like year after year, if you can find, good rut stand locations, because that's where the bucks are going to come and, there's going to be a group of does there. So this is the other thing that if you're trying to target on hunting like big bucks, if that's someone's goal, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, we kind of touched base, is that I think for anyone, setting goals is really important.
Yeah.
If you say, hey, I want to shoot a giant buck, it's like, well, you're actually willing to put in the work to try to go and do it. I don't know how many times I ask myself, it's like, okay, well, compared to someone else out there that could be hunting the same deer, what am I doing that this person may or may not be? And you have to think about, like, you have to put in more work than that person. Plus, you also have to, this deer is living in those woods. So you have to try to step up your game in every way to learn where he's living and what he's doing. But those rut stands is where it can become easier because year after year, that's where bucks are going to be because it's usually coming in after the does.
It's wild you say that, like, that where we moved our camera and it was a, what do you think, Lance, a week's time period where it was just deer.
Are you talking about the first year or the second year?
The second year. I went into with Kylie for a youth hunt, and that's how I found this spot.
Oh, that piece. That's what you're talking about. Yeah.
But we put a camera out there, and it was like the first week or two, it was just deer coming through, big bucks coming through.
Too,
And I let it sit out there for a week and a half before muzzleloader season, and came through and checked the card, and I was like, whoa. What are we doing? All right, now we're on to something. But it was, I don't know if we put a camera out this year or what the deal was, but I know we hunted it, and we hunted it hard, that piece, and we probably messed it up. We probably blew it up. But like
that's one thing I was going to say, though, right there on that note, is if you find a rut spot, stay the fuck out of it. Like, the rut spots that I have, I won't go and hunt those until it's, like, usually about a 1 week window, because I know, within a matter of, I pretty much have it narrowed down to, like, a 5-day span in a couple of my spots. One day in particular, November 7th, the last 2 years in a row, I've killed nice bucks on November 7th out of that same piece of woods. And it's like, I won't even go there now until it's like, November. It's like, I won't even step foot in there. I'll put cameras ahead of time,
right,
but I stay out of there because it's not even worth it for what I'm trying to kill. They won't be there till the exact certain time frame. So then you're just educating all the deer in there. So that's why it's gotten easier and easier for me to kill, a nice buck, out of some of these spots year after year,
right,
simply because I stay out of there.
So we screwed ourselves there. But I think that there's something to that, like what you're saying is it's gonna, I don't know, like I think we went in there, we blew it up, and then all of a sudden there was like, it went all nocturnal. So the sign.
No, deer started disappearing though, like they were heading to another piece
or
something.
Yeah. So we blew it up that way.
On.
Are you hunting when you say rut sign? Are you hunting off scrapes? Are you hunting rub lines, or are you? How's that work?
Yeah, so when I was thinking about, stuff to talk about, before we did this podcast, when I'm kind of, making notes and thinking about, okay, how am I going to talk about stuff and how am I going to explain it? When I started really looking and identifying the success that I've had, I mean, I don't know what percentage, but I'd say almost all of the big bucks that I've killed have been around or over scrapes.
Okay. I got a question for you. So say, summertime, sorry to kind of flop back and forth, but I know we're talking about the rut, but say summertime, you find a new piece, all right? You got that one picture, or, you get a week straight of decent pictures of one deer, one nice mature deer you'd like to kill. Now, where do you see yourself drawing yourself to? Like, what cover? Now you're looking for the rut spot or whatever. Are you looking to go towards the Oak Ridges? Like, what's your next step after you find that one deer?
So I
new
think,
piece.
Yeah, so I think that's where, I guess to not answer the question, but I guess, so for me first, usually there's going to be bucks because I run so many cameras that I'll have had from previous years, right?
Okay.
So those are the bucks that I'm going to, at that point, already have information and intel on. Well, no, I may not necessarily 100% target them. I am going to be targeting them, I guess. But, that's where it's I have information on them. So if I do find a new buck somewhere else, I may not be worried about screwing up that piece of woods or busting that buck out of there because I don't know anything about him yet when I have information on other bucks. Okay. So at that point, I'll go all in trying to learn, that buck's area and trying to, the circle radius around it, trying to learn as much information as I can. So I may end up screwing it up to where, he's now been informed that I'm after him. There's a presence in his woods. Yeah, whether he's out of there or if he just smartens up and he's really cautious. So that's where, for me, it's a learning process for that deer during that time of the season where I'm going to really probably put my, time and effort with bucks that I've had from previous years. And those are the ones I'm going to hunt.
Okay. So, yeah, I see what you're doing then.
Yeah, and then sometimes I do find a buck during the season, though. If I happen to put a camera out somewhere and holy shit, where'd this guy come from? And so from that standpoint, it could be in the right spot where it's very easy, to go ahead and kill this buck. Like you guys were saying, you had pictures, of bucks that were moving during daytime last season, right?
Yeah.
So it's you guys could have potentially, been in the right spot and killed those deer within that first week because you were there at the right time. So that's where a lot of times when you get, pictures on trail camera, that stuff's already happened. So they could still be there, but more likely they're probably going to be moving out of that area soon, and going somewhere else. They may come back. It's but they're usually only in certain areas at certain times throughout the season where there's, a few days or a couple of weeks sometimes where it's hot because everything changes, whether it's food, whether it's does going into heat, it's after the rut goes over. Now they're spreading out, checking other doe groups in different areas. So there's so much stuff that can change throughout a season.
It's tough, man. It's tough. So
it's a big chess game. Yeah.
It is. It's huge.
God. It's the luck of the draw. What day?
Fucking drives me crazy.
Well, yeah, it's that's the beginning of this season. That buck that the one I called the Big Six that was actually a big point pointer. So that buck, I got pictures of him back in 2013 for the first time, and so I had seven seasons of history with him. I didn't hunt him. Yeah, I didn't hunt him for all 7 seasons because after that other big buck that we talked about.
Yeah.
So, because that one he ended up scoring, it was 192 inches. So, of course, it's I'm putting all my marbles in for him, right?
Right, yeah.
So, back when I got pictures of this other buck, he was young. He was 2.5 years old. So, in 13, he's 2.5. In 14, he's, 3.5, 4.5. So, then in 16, I kind of dabbled in him a little bit more. He was one of my targets. But there was another buck that I'd called Dr. Jekyll. That I was after that deer because he was definitely in the 150-inch caliber deer. So he was real nice. So he disappeared in 2017. So that's when I switched back to the Big Six being my main focus was in 2017. So then after hunting him quite a bit in 2017, in 2018 I went all in. I ended up arrowing him, but I didn't end up finishing the story. I had a shot that was through his backstrap. It was a high shot. He ended up living. Luckily, he recovered. And so then, going into this season, I was all in for him. And for the 2019 season, I had said, "There's no way in hell I'm not killing this deer." It's it was I mean, I knew going into the season.
It's game time. It's game time now. Yeah.
I mean, I told a couple of close buddies, I'm like, this deer doesn't stand a fucking chance. Like,
Yeah.
he's walking around with my tag on him. Like, I don't care about that. Because I have all this, I have all this history with him. I know what he's going to do. I should have killed him, a few different years already.
Yeah.
But now I'm stepping up my game, and I'm learning everything about the area even more, going into those little pockets I'd never been into before. And so I just kept stepping it up to where the first 2 weeks of the season, so the season obviously starts on September 15th.
Yep.
I killed him on October 4th. In that time span, I had daylight pictures of him moving in the afternoon that I could have killed him 7 times.
Wow. You just weren't in the stand.
Oh, shit. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just a matter of, okay, I know he's going to be between these 2 or 3 different spots, and every time I picked the wrong spot, and I started using cell cams this year for the first time.
Yeah.
And, I mean, by the way, on that note, I love how New Hampshire's law is for the cell cams. About how
what is the legality of it?
So basically says you can't hunt like any animal the same calendar day as receiving pictures.
Okay.
So what that kind of means to me is that at the end of the day, I had my cameras set to send to me at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, and that's when I'd see like this is what happened for that day on all the cameras I had out. So, of course, every night it was, 8:30 at night. I get notifications. There's pictures. And I'm like, was I right? Was he going to be at one of these 2 or 3 spots? Fuck! I'm like, I sat the wrong stand today.
You son of a bitch!
Yeah. But it also builds confidence because it's like you knew that, like, I was doing all the right stuff. I just wasn't in the right spot.
Right, yeah.
I knew that it was just a matter of time for, the percentages to catch up and finally be in the right spot at the right time. So then, with that deer, there was a north wind. He had been coming to this one scrape. I knew he was going to leave this bedding area. It was near where I, got an arrow in him the year before. And so I just learned that he's going to pretty much get out of this bedding area. He's going to walk to this scrape. And I had gone in there on a Wednesday. It had rained that day. So I'd gotten out of work, ran home, grabbed a stand, went in there in the rain, hung the stand. And then went back in there and hunted it that Friday night, climbed up in my stand, and literally, like, I was taking pictures before I climb in my stand, because I just know it's going to happen tonight.
This is the day.
Shit.
Yeah.
I love walking in and you just got a feeling. Just like, oh, it's happening today.
Oh, I mean, yeah, it's happened. It's happened. Yeah. I mean, I can pretty much call it now. I mean, some of my buddies are like, get out of here. I mean,
right.
There was, what was it? Was it last season or the season before? There's actually, I posted it on Facebook. There's a picture of me and a buddy were sitting around on another friend's couch, and I'm showing him the pictures of the buck, and their other friend, he took pictures of us. It was Ryan Brokes who took the picture, and then Ryan Paris, he's the one who runs New Hampshire Deer Hunting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so he's sitting next to me. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to kill this deer tomorrow, or it was either tomorrow or the next day. And he's looking at me like, you're fucking kidding me.
Yeah, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, I'm like, no, I'm going to go kill this deer. And it just ended up happening,
That's awesome. That's funny shit. To get back, circle back to scouting. I know we got off topic a little bit, but so starting now, right? You're going into a new piece or maybe a piece you've hunted previously. What exactly are you going in? Are you looking for that's going to, make or break your decision that I want to hang a camera here, or I want to, put a stand up here, or, I'm going to hunt this year.
So, I mean, I won't usually hang a stand. And I mean, I also do.
Well, for early spring, I'm saying so now is
okay.
Yeah.
So with that, I mean, I'm just going into spots and trying to figure out where there's a lot of buck sign, where there's a lot of rubs, where there's a lot of scrapes. Then I'll end up probably it's in July probably is when I'll go out because I do spend a lot of time in June fishing for lake trout.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of distracted that time of year. And then starting in July, that's when I get the cameras out 'cause the racks have developed. They're already showing what you need to see at this point to know whether they're gonna be worth hunting, in my opinion. So that's where then I'll get the cameras out in July, and then in those spots you said, okay, there's a lot of buck sign here. It looks like there's got to be a mature buck in this area, but there's not that much sign there for no reason. Then when I get those cameras out, then I can find and confirm that, okay, yeah, there is something in here I want to hunt. And the way I do that is I run a shitload of cameras.
How much do you run in a spot in a piece?
So all right. That's a hard question to answer because it depends on am I going all in on a deer, right?
Right.
Right.
But it's like I think I have up to, I think, like 40 cameras probably.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
You've run through how many of the spy points or whatever camera you run do you have?
So I have 10 of those.
You have 10. All right.
Yeah. So, I mean, I kind of just, I kept buying more and more last year as the season went on.
Yeah, well, you can see how they work out, so.
Oh, man. You can utilize them like crazy.
Yeah, and I think, the biggest advantage to having those cameras, yes, there's the whole thing that can be said is you're not putting scent down in the woods. You don't have to be invasive. For me, the hugest advantage to having cell cams is you don't have to spend time going to check them.
Right.
Correct. Yeah.
So you can actually hunt more. It's like, from that standpoint, some people have said, like, oh, it'll make it easier. It's like, well, no, I can actually enjoy myself going and hunting, knowing I don't have to choose between checking cameras this afternoon or this day and going somewhere and scouting or hunting.
There's been a million times where I've gone out, sat a stand, and been like, all right, when I'm done on this sit, if I get down at 11 or whatever, whenever I have to be home, I'm gonna check that camera. I check that camera. There hasn't been any activity in the last week. You know what I mean? Something like that is huge because I know I wouldn't have to waste my fucking time sitting in the stand that there's been no activity for it in a week.
Yeah, correct.
Yep. But then again, too, that's where it also could be if that you have a good feeling about that spot. It could mean you have an activity for a week that, tomorrow is going to be the day when they show up too.
Yeah.
So it's this whole game.
Yeah, you can't win.
Yeah. But that's where having, more cameras out, I can, gain more information. So there still is, a lot that, are just regular cameras. You have to check them. But by having them out there in the woods, I can gain that information and say, okay, is there a buck that I want to go and hunt? Mm-hmm. Because the hardest part of killing a big buck, in my opinion, which is different from somebody who hasn't necessarily done it like a good amount of times, it's finding one.
Right.
Staying on it and staying on that deer.
Yeah,
not just snagging one picture of it.
Well, but first it's actually just even getting one picture. Finding a big caliber buck, it's like isn't that easy. You only get like a handful, of pictures. It's like are in different spots where it's like, okay, this is a giant buck that you really want to put your time and effort into. There could be a mediocre buck, that's nice. Let's say 3.5-year-old. Because for me, it's like I kind of consider like what's starting to be considerable for me would be like. I don't even want to say 3.5 anymore. It's like it's usually 4.5 or older. Is kind of where and if I had by choice, I would wait till 5.5 or 6.5.
Yeah.
So it kind of depends on what other options that you have. But to find 3.5 plus or older deer, it's not always that easy to get pictures of.
Well, not in New Hampshire either. Depending on where you're gonna hunt, you don't know if there's gonna be a drive coming through, or you put all your eggs in. I feel like we're getting off topic again, but fuck it, it's fine. Put all your eggs in one basket. Right? Yeah. And we're gonna hunt this deer, and we're gonna do this. We
hunt a big piece though too.
It's a giant piece of woods.
It's a huge fucking piece. So.
But it's public land, so people can still come up hiking. Yeah, they can come do whatever they want to do. And, not saying it wasn't us that blew up that spot or why we haven't shot it yet. But
so, from that standpoint, one thing that you said, though, is like having a piece of woods. It's like, because right now it's like, I hunt southern New Hampshire, but I have it's got to be like 3 kind of main areas that I go to, but within those spots, there's a lot of spots in those spots, right?
Right.
But then it's like I'll have other cameras running or other spots that I'm looking at. So it could be 6, 7, 8 spots in one season just in southern New Hampshire that I'm kind of targeting and checking out. And then it's like I could be jumping over the border, going down into Mass. Obviously, I spend a lot of time scouting up in Maine too.
Mm-hmm.
Checking out up around my dad's cabin is up there. But it's different because that's really big woods. So you're not necessarily targeting certain bucks. You're just trying to learn different terrain features and go in and check stuff out.
Right.
And then obviously pray for snow so I can do some tracking.
Yeah, exactly.
That doesn't always happen. So if not, it's trying to figure out where to put stands where you're pretty much just waiting it out. It's like you're finding a spot where if you sit there long enough, there's gonna be a giant that's gonna come through eventually.
Right. Yeah. If you go into so you go into a spot and you're looking for sign. Are you basing your buck sign off like 2-year-old, 3-year-old sign rubs? You know what I mean? Or is it just strictly the past year's rubs that you're looking for?
So with that, I mean, have you guys heard of the term signpost?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm gonna put probably more attention into trying to find like signposts, because rubs, I mean, you don't know if that deer is made by an old buck or a young buck. If it's just rubs that are just thrown down everywhere, there's a lot of those that are out there. So it's
well,
you can
sorry to interrupt, but you can see like on the little pines and little spruces, whatever, like the it's almost like aggravation or frustration rubs, like kind of Hal talked about. But then you will come up to a sapling that's 5 inches in diameter and ripped up. I'm like, all right, well, I feel like that's a buck that's been is hitting that, but I don't know, because unless I have a camera on there, I don't know. So
and then normally I wouldn't really put cameras on rubs for the most part. Anyways, I'm gonna put cameras on scrapes.
Okay.
Whether it's a scrape that I've found, and then too, so it's trying to also look at and find not just a scrape, but a scrape that has a nasty licking branch over it. I mean, I don't know how much time have you guys spent a lot of times with scrapes and really trying to learn scrapes and kind of identify the difference between primary scrapes?
Yeah, I've made mock scrapes. I've looked at scrapes. I've been, I've seen scrapes that are almost like a hood of a trunk a hood of a car.
I see what you're saying, Neil.
Have you spent a lot of time looking at the branch though?
No, I mean, I can see when it's tore up and ripped down, but I guess I haven't paid much attention to that.
See a branch that there's an end off it, looks like it's fucking exploded, like it just splintered at the end of it.
Yeah.
That's what they're using for their orbital gland, that they're putting down scent in that. If you just see a scrape where we dug up the ground, and like there's just like a hemlock, let's say, branch there, and there isn't part of it that's like messed up, and like there isn't like a branch broke off, and it's all mangled at the end. That's probably not necessarily like a really heavily used like mature buck, like I guess community bar primary scrape. Like
okay,
because you're gonna have all kinds of activity. When you find those scrapes, you're gonna have does there standing on their hind legs, getting their head up in it, like stretched up. I mean, almost jumping like to get their head up in it. You're gonna have all kinds of deer where you can leave a camera there year round, and you're just gonna see deer after deer after deer come through there.
Just come check it out, even summertime. There's nothing to do with the rut.
Even summertime,
they want to come check
it out. It's almost like a signpost. It's almost like a signpost, but a scrape. It's just going to be that's going to be a heavily trafficked scrape with that broken branch all tore up.
So that's what, I mean, a lot of times I'll look for, not only to potentially hunt over, but to get pictures. I mean, that's a good point right there. That's a good tip. Yeah, I mean, I'll run a lot of my cameras on those scrapes to try to go and figure out, what's in the area. And then from there, it's like, I guess kind of one of the other things to kind of get back to the whole scouting thing and trying to figure out those pieces of the puzzle. It's always asking yourself why. Like, okay, why did I jump this deer wherever it was? Okay, when I got a picture of it, where was it coming from? Where was it going? Why was it doing that? And I don't know how many times it's like I've talked to people and they're like, oh, I got a picture of this giant buck. Like, I'd love to kill it. I've had pictures of it for 3 years. And it's like, okay, why'd you get pictures of that deer there? They look at me like, what do you mean?
Yeah, he was fucking rutting. He came through.
Yeah. I got a fucking picture of him. Like, it's like, well, that's why.
Yeah.
It's like, well, no, like, why did he walk by your camera? Like, what was the date? Was it nighttime? A lot of times it is, right? I mean,
yeah.
And of course it's like, well, was it right after, it got dark at? Was it right before it got light in the morning? Or was it at midnight? And then if I'm getting still a blank look, it's like, all right, you kind of need to step back. And if you want to kill that buck, you need to start asking why. Why is it doing this? It's like, if you have history on a deer, look at all those pictures and say, like, okay, it's like, where is it going? Why is it going there? What time is it? And trying to figure all that stuff out. What was the wind direction when that stuff happened? Because that's all stuff that you need to look at, because if it's, leaving a bedding area, well, is it leaving it on, a west wind, on a north wind? Is it a random wind bed? Could it be an east wind? Because I've literally found correlations a lot of times that, like, deer will go to a certain scrape or come through a certain area with those wind directions. And it could be whether it's in the evening leaving or going back 2 in the morning. So, like, trying to, like, figure that stuff out, it's not just a matter of, there's this buck, and what is he doing there? Well, no, where is he going? Why is he going there? Where is he coming from? Where was he previously? And trying to figure out those other pieces, I guess.
Right. Pieces of the puzzle. Jesus Christ.
I mean, it makes common sense, right? I mean,
No. It makes perfect sense.
No, it's like,
but when you say it, though, it's almost like, it's like, wait a minute, why didn't I think of that before?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. When you just said that, I'm like, we never really even looked at that.
I don't look at wind, and I try to match up pictures, and I try to do match up times and like why and how come.
Right.
But I don't get that in depth with it, I guess. I don't know why.
I mean, but that was such a common sense thing of like, you just nailed it right on the button. It's like, oh shit,
If they're coming from this direction on this camera, then they're leaving on this wind, then you can almost put, if you get a certain amount of pictures together, you can almost just kind of figure that shit out.
Yeah, I mean, and again, you can figure it out, but then it's still actually having it happen is obviously the hard part, right?
Right.
But when you start figuring that stuff out, okay, like why is he doing this stuff? Because mature buck, they're different than any other deer that's out there. They don't like other deer for the most part. A lot of the bucks that I've killed, they haven't been with does. They're not trailing, tailing a doe. Even during what you'd consider the rut time, oftentimes they're not with a doe because they're not going to go to her until it's like prime time. They almost know down to the hour where they're still lurking back in the shadows. The other bucks will be chasing her around. I've seen some amazing, it's like rut activity where you got bucks chasing each other, grunting, coming back and forth. I've seen 3 bucks like fan out across the swamp, descending upon a doe, and they're playing this game of cat and mouse. And all of a sudden, here comes this other giant just stepping out of the shadows. He shows his presence, and I'm like, hey, I'm here, boys. And they just run off, their tails tucked between their legs, and just, beat it out of there.
Fuck.
But so it's one of those, though. It's like to try to go and say that, okay, like if a buck of that stature usually isn't even with a doe, it's like they're doing stuff that's completely different than all these other deer, and they're doing it with a purpose. They're living and moving to stay alive. So you have to try to figure out, okay, why are they doing these things? It's like, where are they coming from? Where are they going? It's like, is it is it on a ridge? Because I'm assuming where you guys probably hunt
it's on
in your area.
Ridge.
Yeah, there's a lot of. I know there's a lot of big kind of ridges and mountains.
It's exactly the terrain. Yeah, it's like sprucey. Exactly. We'll have like good transitions.
It's a lot of ledge too. A lot of ledge.
Real ridgy. It'll be swampy. It's almost like the perfect scenario because you have swamp, you have select cut hardwoods, and then you have like real sprucey kind of like softwoods, and it's like the mix is, you couldn't ask for a better mix. You know what I mean?
But it's where we're looking. We just gotta figure out.
It's just it's a giant piece of wood, so I guess that's what's tough. But
and then it's thinking about like, okay, if a deer's trying to walk through this piece of woods, how are they going to do it? In a way that they're going to try to survive and live. And it's like thinking about things like not only prevailing wind directions, thinking about the thermals. It's like, is there water? Is are the thermals going to be rising or pulling down towards that body of water? Obviously, when walking on a ridge top, are they on like the wayward side of it? Because the wind could be blowing up and over the top, right? It's like if you got a ridge and that wind's coming up and over the top, it's like, well, they want to be able to see looking down one side of the ridge, but then they want to be able to smell what's on the other side.
Right, yeah.
So it's like they know what's going on both sides of that ridge. They can see and hear on one, but smell the opposite side.
Right.
So they're safe walking that whole entire, ridge line.
So it's like, correct.
And it'll be different in the morning versus the evening. So it's like those, things too, you start to kind of learn after a while once you start to hunt, certain areas.
Right. God damn. All right. So the scrapes, I know you knocked those out. You personally don't think those are just all nighttime?
Oh, no.
Okay. All right, I had to get that off my chest. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, no, these are all great questions.
No, I'm sorry. No, because I listen to a lot of podcasts and I, try to do my research, and I've been hunting for a long, long time. But just like you said, like, you go hunting and go in the woods, and for the last, forever, I've been like, if I see a deer, and I'm happy. If it's an antlered buck, I try to better myself every buck I shoot. But I haven't picked out a buck, and we've had multiple times too. It's just, I guess, when it comes down to time and research and trying to pattern it doesn't work out.
Time is the biggest thing between work and family time and stuff
right.
like that.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest part.
And that's one thing there. That I've kind of created a life. For me, it's like with the job that I have, I can hunt pretty much every day. 4 of the 5 bucks that I killed this year, I worked the same day that I killed these bucks. whether it was I hunted in the morning, then went out in the evening, and ended up hunting, or it was I killed the buck in the morning, then went into work in the evening.
Yeah.
But I've set up a schedule that I can hunt almost every single day, during the season.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, and so it's, from that standpoint, I'm lucky, and I'm really fortunate to have a lot of time to really dedicate towards it. And
you can do your research.
Yeah, without having that amount of time, it's like I know I wouldn't be as successful. I still feel that I've learned a lot where I would be successful every year, but I wouldn't have the success that I've consistently been having all the time, because a lot of it comes down to time spent in the woods.
Right.
And I think to kind of circle back to something that we were talking about earlier is that I used to spend, as we talked about, a lot of time getting that tunnel vision, right?
Yeah.
I would hunt not only one area, but I would always friggin' hunt too. Now I've shifted to, I actually spend, even during the season, I still spend a lot more time scouting, especially in September and October, than I do hunting. I may go into a piece of woods, like, with a stand or with a saddle, depending on the type of setup where I'm going, and I have my bow in hand, and I may never even climb up a tree because I'm still scouting during that time frame. And it's like, there's no point for me to go and set up in a tree. It's like, unless I'm like, okay, I'm fucking killing something tonight. Like,
right. Unless something's there. Yeah, there's no point. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
You're not wasting well-used time.
I think Kevin, I think Kevin Plant, touched on that too. That was like his like hot tip was like, scout more, hunt less. And it's absolutely right. But I've also like, part of it is like, I don't know if you follow Dan Infault at all or whatever, but his is like, just be mobile, and he likes those swamps and stuff. So, if we didn't have time to set up cameras and we don't have anything patterned or we didn't see anything that was like, a target buck, like you're talking about, it's like, just go walk in the woods, like you're saying, go find a spot that looks hot and like kind of fresh sign, early October, maybe when they're starting to tear shit up, and, set up. So are you running and gunning like that, or are you strictly just running cameras?
So I'll if I go out, I'll have my backpack. I'll either have a lone wolf stand or I'll have a tethered saddle with me. Then from there, I always have cameras in my backpack.
Yeah.
So I usually I have a binocular set up, because especially if I'm trying to target big bucks, it's like I have like on my chest like a binocular harness.
Yep.
So I can look and see stuff up in front of me. A lot of times I don't even carry my bow. The bow will be on my backpack. If I'm having like, let's say like a climbing tree stand or a lone wolf with sticks set up, I'll have that on my back, the backpack on that, and then my bow on the back of the backpack.
Right.
Because at this point, like, I'm not planning on sneaking up on on some giant in his bedroom. Like, it's not going to happen. They're in there for a reason. So I can't even think of the amount of times during hunting season that I've been walking around that I've seen like a big buck that I could have launched an arrow at. I can't even remember a time.
Right.
It's like,
yeah.
So the amount of time that I've spent in the woods, it's a waste of time to carry around that bow and think about trying to launch an arrow at something. So
if something comes by,
so I'll have it, I'll have it with me. But at that point, it's just becoming a scouting mission, unless I really, see something or get a good feeling. But I've even now learned that it's the more time that I can keep walking and learn a little bit more until I then find a spot, put out a camera. And I put a camera there because I believe it's a spot where I could kill something. There's a good chance of it. And then I may come back, and hunt it depending on what else I have going on. And so that's where, but those are, I guess kind of, learning new areas, and even sometimes the areas where, because within this chess game, in the areas where I'm planning on or trying to target killing a buck, I may hunt spots of that piece of woods where I'm not actually trying to kill him. I'm almost trying to like cross it off the list and have him think that's where I'm hunting it, if that makes sense. I'm almost purposely trying to fuck up that spot.
Yeah, okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, because if there's this one core area, right, and I'm like, okay, this is where I'm probably, it's going to happen. Like, I just got to wait to the right time. I'm not going to not hunt, but I'm going to go ahead and hunt all the other spots around it that, like, I don't think I'm in the game, but it's like they're almost just like, it is a waste of time. I'm still there.
But if it happens, it happens type of deal?
Yeah,
right.
But I'm almost teaching that deer that I'm hunting other spots in other areas, so he gets even safer in that core area. Because he knows there's pressure there, but I haven't gone into his area, and I'll wait till the conditions are right. but it's like I'm almost increasing my odds in some ways because I'm forcing him kind of into
Right.
that one
That's
area.
so fucking
hunting all
smart.
these other
Dude,
ones.
that's fucking crazy. Yeah. Pushing them into this spot. You know, this is where I want you to be.
Teaching them, yeah.
You go in there and then I'll come find you.
Yeah, I mean, it's once they can get comfortable, in those certain areas, then it makes it a little bit easier for you. So that's where I'll hunt and I'll try to scout and see what I can learn. But it's like I'm not actually probably planning on killing him or anything else there.
Right. Over your
Never
years.
heard anyone say that.
Yeah, I know that.
I've heard it. I've heard it. I listen to a shit ton of podcasts, so it's like I've heard that stuff. But then it's hearing it and then actually applying it, or
Right.
it sometimes takes a while.
Yeah.
To actually start doing it.
I was just gonna say something, but I forgot what I was gonna
Sorry.
say. No, yeah, you fucked me all up. Oh no, like so over the years of just trying to locate these bucks, is there any kind of similarities or patterns to where they're gonna be? Is it like swampy? Is it gonna be sprucey, hardwoods? Is there any like conjunction with any of that, or are they all different?
I mean, it's all different, and usually, the similarities. It's where there usually isn't going to be. It's like hunting pressure, I guess. Because I've killed some that have been. They're basically walking and skirting people's yards.
Well,
It's
that's
like,
what that Daniel
it's
buck.
like
I listened to the
sometimes
Big Bucks Registry podcast, and it seemed like that buck was just like he was just doing whatever the fuck he wanted to do, mowing people's lawns.
It's like he was a ghost to hunters, but it's like to people who lived in certain neighborhoods, they saw him all the time.
Right? Yeah.
So it's just like weird. It's like how it's like they know it's like what's hunting pressure and what's not hunting pressure. There's another buck that I killed. It's like that. That was. It was close to a school. And it's like literally it's like there was sports fields and stuff like that. It's like where this deer would bed down and live was near. It's like people running and screaming and kids playing and stuff like that. But it was,
He was
it's like
safe
that's
there.
where he felt safe because he knew that nobody would cross that barrier. It's
Right.
like if you think about in urban areas, right? That kid may never even now step foot off the lawn, right? Unless
Right.
a ball happens to go awry and roll out in the woods. A lot of times people aren't going into the woods, so that is almost a barrier. It's like so for a buck to bed. Oftentimes, if you listen to obviously Dan Infalt, right? You
Yeah.
hear about with buck bedding. Well, they usually want something that's like safe at their back, whether it's water. Whether it's like a cliff or something like that, they always have an exit, but they want something that that stuff can't sneak up from behind them. It makes them feel safe.
Right.
So that could be also a human presence. That's a non-hunting human presence.
Oh.
Makes perfect sense.
Because let's
Really
face it,
does.
right? We all know when gun season starts, where do the freaking deer hide?
Everything starts fucking changing.
Right
Yeah.
behind the fucking houses.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
In the rose
Right to the
bushes
house.
out back. Yeah.
Yeah. They gravitate towards the houses because they know you
Yeah,
can't
you
get
start seeing
close
bigger deer in people's yards. You're like, holy smokes.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
probably
just
getting
like
hunted.
all the thick shit, all the thorns behind people's houses and everything. They're all. I go to my uncle. I'm gonna stop talking.
Oh, you sure you're giving up too much information?
Yeah, I go there and I'm like, all right, I know these deer are in this thickest. Like you couldn't walk through it. It's just thorn bushes and
it's
garbage.
briars
But they're
vines.
soon as like you said, soon as gun season starts, they're just there, and then you blow them out of there, and then all right, well, what do I do now?
Yeah.
So.
I really think, it's like that's where, obviously, you mentioned, it's like Kevin, who I talk to a lot. And for me, it's been, having, Kevin and a few of my other buddies who I can constantly talk to, about hunting, it helps us get better, right? Because you're always, talking about
Keeping it in your head.
Yeah, and then by talking to people about it, even as successful as I've been, I'm learning by trying to teach others, right?
Right, yeah.
So it reinforces what I already know. It's like by telling someone else that, and by hearing someone else's thoughts on it, it's like, wow, wait a minute, I never thought of it like how you do.
Yeah, then
Right.
it works out. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you have that type of, like hunting buddy who you can trust, that you don't want to, they're not going to go into your spots, right?
Right, yeah.
Right.
It almost drives you too, because there is that competition that we all have because we want to be successful,
Yeah.
whether it's within ourselves a competition or it's like, between, a friend, but it's like, it's the amount of effort that you put into it. And that's where, I've pretty much always known it's like that I'm going to be successful at some point during the season because of the amount of effort that I put in. I almost feel like it's deer karma that it's going to pay off. If you put in that much effort, eventually you're going to get the reward.
So,
But-
so I don't know where you left off there. I'm sorry.
So yeah, I mean, we're pretty much just talking about, just, putting in the extra effort, I think, is really, the point I was trying to make.
Yeah.
Is, as I've said, I kind of ask myself, it's like, to, drive myself, because the getting up early during a season, it's like, hours and hours before it gets light to get and walk in a piece of woods. I mean, that stuff starts to suck after a while. It's
right.
like there's a grind that goes into hunting season, but it's knowing that if you put in that effort, you're eventually going to get the payoff. You're going to get the reward.
Right.
And so it's, whether it's the effort in the off season, scouting, like, right now, going out, in March and April, spending the time just covering miles and miles and miles, checking out new areas, it's going to help, because you always want like a backup to a backup to a backup plan.
Yeah.
A, B, and C, yeah.
Yeah. Because if you're trying to kill, a big mature buck, they have to be killable, right? You can't just get that one nighttime picture or a handful of nighttime pictures. That buck, you're in the wrong spot, or it's not the right. You might be in the right spot, but it's not the right time.
Right.
So now you need to have somewhere else to go focus your efforts on, and that's where having multiple spots. It's like, if you can go check a camera somewhere else, and okay, wow, I'm getting daylight pictures here. Well, that buck's killable. Go hunt him. You may want the bigger buck somewhere else, but he's not killable right now, so you're just wasting your time.
Yeah.
So that's some of the other things that I would kind of give for advice, is that, it's like you have to have multiple spots, multiple deer that you're hunting, and try to hunt the ones that are actually killable. I mean, unless you're going all in on something, because it's, it means that much to you. You've had that much history. It's like you have, it's that caliber of a deer.
Right.
That,
it's like, this is all I'm doing this year. Right. Yeah.
For it,
Right.
How many cameras are you running? All right, so I'm going to put you in a situation, like you find something that is like gets your attention. All right, I can kill this buck, or maybe it's a nighttime picture. I can't kill this buck. I don't know anything about this buck, but he's huge. What are you, in this piece, are you looking, you're going to set your shit up on old scrapes you saw last year, or like in the summertime, how are you going to set up your cameras to try to figure out this buck?
So what time of year is it? Are we talking now?
I guess just roll through like summer. You're gonna throw a camera up. Okay, I know there's a buck in here, and then I guess go from there.
So I mean, if it's summertime, as we talked about before, I've identified there's a couple leftover targets, right? It's like, I mean, for instance, right now there's, a real nice, 3.5-year-old that, I'll say I let live last year. It's like I had no interest in killing him. He has a beautiful rack, but it was just one of those that, the season that I was having, I said, okay, I want to at least give him another year, another 2 years.
Yeah.
So I have him like on my agenda. So it's one that I'm, pretty much staying out of there, because I've learned his woods and his areas. I know where I can probably kill him. So I'll get cameras in there, come July to confirm that he's still alive. Then from there, it's like it'll be on where I've seen scrapes from previous years, or if it's travel areas, whether it's like a break in a rock wall, if it's like a pinch point between swamps or whatever it is, that I know that he has to travel through there at certain points, and I'll get a handful of cameras out in that area, let's say in July.
All right, so certain spots you're gonna go pinch points, breaks in stone walls, or whatever it may be, little scrapes. Where this old sign.
So it could be where there's signs. So it could be where there's scrapes that I know are going to be opened up again. I know he's going to hit that scrape, just because they'll do that year after year.
Right.
Or if it's like other little connecting areas where they have to go through it. It could be like a pinch between houses. It could be a break in a rock wall. It could be a funnel, like the way that a ridge comes off. There's a cliff on it. I know that he's going to come down from this clear cut or something. This is where they're going to enter the clear cut. They're going to come into a field in this particular area. So I'll put cameras on those areas to kind of confirm that, okay, yeah, the deer's there. I want to see what he has for headgear this year. But then I'm not necessarily like using that information other than to confirm that he's there. And that I'm going to try to hunt the spots that I know from the previous year where he's going to be, earlier in the year, like the middle of the season or late season. But then when it comes to, finding out more about new deer, I may put more cameras in those spots if I have a really good feeling, throughout July and August, and focus more of my efforts in new areas to try to learn as much about it as I can, or I guess more so to actually get a picture of a really nice buck in that spot, because it may take me more cameras because I don't really know where he's going to go or what he's going to do. And then during the season, then it completely kind of varies because there's so many factors that go into it, depending on, is there a buck that's a far level above the others? Because at that point, I mean, like last year with the big 6, I mean, fuck, I don't even know, I had a camera fucking every, few hundred yards.
I'm going to catch this bastard.
Yeah. I mean, I had probably, it's like I probably had, I don't even shit. It was between 20 and 25 cameras. Like,
oh, shit.
Really?
It's a circle in this piece, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I wouldn't check them all the time. It's like they were just there. And it was more so a lot of them are, if I go near that area to hunt it, I may, check the camera.
Right.
But it's like, but I knew what he was going to do and where he was going to be and where I was going to kill him. So I didn't have to really check the cameras. And yeah, I was using some of the cell cameras, it's like this year too. But what I was doing with a lot of the other cameras was I was expanding the search and putting them in different spots further out. I was like, okay, if I'm, hunting, in one area, let's say if we draw a straight line over the course of like 1.5 miles or 2 miles, I know he's kind of going, for the most part, on that line, and then I'm sticking other cameras out in bunches, like in every other spot.
To see if he's poking off into a finger or whatever. Yeah.
I mean, because, I literally learned that he was, I mean, I had pictures of him. I'd have to go back and look. So I'm kind of, bear with me. I'm kind of making this up. But, like, on September 15th, I had a picture of him, like, 1.5 miles away from kind of where his core area was. And then, like, the next day I'd have a picture of him 2 miles, I guess about 1.5 miles to the east, and then about another mile or so, like, north. And so it'd be one of those that, like, he would be jumping around between all these different spots and areas.
Right. He's not.
And so by having that information, at least I knew he was there, but then I could figure out, okay, like, where is he not going? It's like, where is he not venturing into? Because then I can almost cross that spot off the map and say, okay, well, he's now going into this little pocket of woods. He's been there, so I know if he's been there once, he's probably going to come back. And so that's where running more cameras for him, I was able to kind of learn where he is going and where he's not going to, and say, like, okay, well, if out of that big circle, if he's only using, I think what has it been said that most bucks, they'll only use 10% of the woods. 90% of it, they're never going to use. They're only going to use the 10%. So to try to figure out that 10% really kind of helps.
Dude, that's fucking wild. You're pretty much
great.
you're figuring out like what his life pattern is before you even tried hunting him. That way you don't have to waste time to go in there during hunting season. You don't have to go in there and, booger it all up.
Efficient.
Yeah.
More efficient about it.
Yeah.
Really, that's all it comes down to.
Damn.
I mean, yeah, it's like, if your goal, right, Tyler, was to try to, like, take Lance off the face of this earth, right? You would need to learn every one of his habits.
I'll see you later.
But, it's like, you learn where he goes, right? Like, where does he shop? Where does he go to work? It's like, what time does he come home? Like, you learn all those pieces of information, right?
Right.
And so that's the same thing that you can start to do. It's like, with some of these bucks, is you want to really try to, as you said, learn their habits, where they go, where they don't go. And that's where cameras are a huge help to that. But then, of course, as I said, that's different from rut spots. Rut spots, you just show up and you sit back and enjoy the show and, hey, what comes through there? Because it's usually close to, like, doe bedding. That's why most rut spots are successful, because it's near, where
they're
doe
just
bedding
coming, cruising through, checking beds.
Yep, those bucks will, of course, like most of us, when it comes to, girls, if we're ever going to, do stupid stuff, it's because the girl's involved, right?
Yeah. Hey,
and that's what,
I'm going to sniff this bed. Yeah.
Shit, we're going to find the more girls. Yeah.
So that's when, if these bucks that have lived, it's like, the whole entire rest of the year, except for this 1 week, right, where it's a free-for-all now, they're going to start, doing stupid stuff. Yeah. That's, your rut spot. But the rest of the time, it's like, that's probably not going to necessarily be a spot you need to focus on the rest of the season.
Dude,
that's great info, dude.
It's fun. I'm thinking back on shit. I'm just like,
when you explain stuff, it's like I can pop situations.
The thing is I've read and I listen to podcasts and I read, but for whatever reason, I guess I can take some information. I guess, I don't know, you maybe being local, or I don't know what the deal is, but when you explain it, it's like, okay, that makes sense. I don't know.
Well, scenarios pop in the head. So
so you got all the shit that you've done. You're like, oh, fuck, okay.
Yeah, well, and you'll constantly have that. It's like, I don't know how many times I've been out in the woods and, like, I'll be like, holy shit, this is what that guy was talking about 3 years ago on a podcast that I listened to.
Yeah.
Like, the fucking light bulb goes off And
Yeah.
it's like, wow.
Oh, this all makes
I'm an
sense.
idiot.
Yeah.
God
How did I
damn.
not like see that before? It's like I heard it, but it's like now it's like I know exactly what he's talking about. It makes sense.
Right.
Kind of answered a piece to our puzzle that we've been struggling with the past couple of years.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if we ever got that buck back on camera, Lance. Not this year.
Well, I heard we had a huge 8 on camera, huge 8, thick horns and just very
Little drop time.
What's the word? Very symmetrical, and had a drop time started, and I heard one guy opening day of muzzleloader season came in and said, there's a drop time 10 in there that we were thinking maybe the next year that could have been in, but we didn't get a single picture of him at all for that whole next year. He kind of just moved out of that whole piece.
Yep.
So where that deer went, like I guess like it is a question. Do you notice if you're following a deer, say you start him off at 2 and you kind of got all his locations down? Do you see him skipping one of those locations?
I've only seen that. Yeah, I've only seen that once, and that was the buck that I killed in 2015. That was so where I originally got pictures of him. He was there like 11, 12. He was there 13, and then he wasn't really there much the end of 13. I think something did happen. I don't know if that's the year that he ended up getting shot, but I did pull out of the base of his neck, the top of his shoulder. We pulled the bullet out of him. So I don't know if that was the year that he got shot. Yeah, I mean,
Wow.
I mean, it's like if that deer could friggin' talk, right? 10 and a half years old. It's like I bumped into people, it's like who had said, I mean, one guy said once he saw that deer walking in the snow and had his bow, and he had such buck fever of watching this deer walk by him at 20 yards, what should have been a chip shot. He said, I was so cold and had shaken so bad and had so much adrenaline, I couldn't even draw the bow. Yeah, I mean, and then somebody else had told me that they fired at him one time, completely missed. Then obviously somebody had shot him. I'd hate to be that freaking guy. It's like,
it's like,
yeah,
he is gone.
Yeah.
But like, I've noticed that they would skip a year, then all of a sudden the deer would be back in that same piece a year later.
So he wasn't there at the end of 13, and then 14, he ended up. There was somebody that camped out and had started a fire there. It's like near this freaking buck's bedroom. A guy had camped out and started a fire, and I showed up.
Camped out like setting up a tent and shit.
Camping, yeah, like
shit.
Yeah, it's a friggin' stupid story, but yeah, it's like when I came cruising in there, it was because Halloween I think was on like a Friday. This would have been in 2014.
Did we get a lot of snow on Halloween in 2000? No, sorry, that's a couple years back. Never mind.
No, so this basically though, so I remember like I had gone the night before when I was leaving, like I saw a random headlamp. And so I was like, oh, fuck. Like, I hope it's not, friggin' another hunter in here doing something or whatever. And I'm like, fuck. So I left. I come back the next morning, and all of a sudden I see, like, a big glowing orange object. And I'm like, did somebody put a pumpkin out here? Like, what the fuck is this? Like, because Halloween was the night before. And then as I get closer, I hear music playing. And I'm like, what is going on?
Fucking guys.
He's sleeping out there?
Sleeping in your stand.
His old lady kicked him out.
Yeah, no shit, huh?
So, yeah, it was pretty random. And he had just said, hey, looked on, Google Maps, wanted to, just go someplace random and picked Halloween night to go on a camping trip, expedition. And I mean, obviously, I was ready to throw up on myself. I'm so freaking just like, you've got to be shitting me. It's like, this is 4 years of hunting this buck, and like, I had him dead to rights the next day, and it was opening day of muzzleloader at that point, and this guy's here, partying and camping out, and I couldn't get mad at him though, right? Because, it's like, well, it's like, yeah, it's not even that. It's like, he was like a nut, like for loving the outdoors in a different way. It's like I'm out here hunting,
correct,
and it's like he just loved the outdoors and camping and this type of shit that he's literally
random shit,
yeah, it's in this spot. It's like where you wouldn't ever expect to see anyone camping out, like, and so that screwed that up, and so that deer wasn't there again, and then he had in this other bedding area. He hadn't pretty much been there for almost 2 years, and then he showed back up in 2015. As soon as he did, I was like, it's game on. Like I know he's done now. So
so say you find a nice 5-year-old deer in a spot. Skips a year. Are you still gonna hunt that same spot? Are you gonna still scout that same spot where he skipped a year? Just hope he comes back the next year if he didn't.
I would say it's very rare though for them to skip a year like that. It's probably more likely. Yeah, something would have had to happen that's a different type of scenario, but just them kind of going about their normal business, they're going to do the same thing and be in the same spots every year. And then I'm sure you guys have heard this from other people talking that like as they get older, it's almost like their core area kind of shrinks down a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, I have seen that. They do get, whether it's shrinking or it's just they tend to get like more comfortable in certain areas than others. So
They just
where
hang
you
out
learn,
there more.
where you learn to hunt them, they'll be more prevalent there. I still think they go off and check the other spots and go there, but they're going to stay more in those areas because most of like a deer's behavior, it's learned behavior.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I've seen deer. It's like when I'm tracking the snow, like up in Maine, some deer they'll go ahead and they'll walk, they'll walk and then they'll back up on their tracks and then they'll hop over like a blowdown tree or like a rock or something.
Just to throw you off.
Yeah, and so they'll keep doing that though, time and time and time again. Where other deer, it's like, well, find a brook, and then it's like walk down the brook and come out of it. They won't backtrack. They'll go in the brook and come out.
Right.
Other deer, it's like will freeze sometimes and like hope that you don't see them in thick cover. Where other deer bolt, and it's because they learned, whether it was from another hunter or from a coyote, that's how they learn to survive. So they keep doing it. They keep repeating that same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
So certain deer have learned certain behaviors that has helped them live to that age. And once they get to be, I would say probably 3.5 and make it through, the season at 3.5, at that point, they've learned how to live and survive in those woods. So it takes somebody coming in and doing something different to have them slip up, because they're not going to get killed if everyone just keeps doing the same thing.
Right, exactly. No, that's an awesome
and, I mean,
point.
I can't think of a clearer, scenario than when I hunted a piece of heavily hunted public land in Massachusetts this year. And I mean, I looked at it on the map and I said, okay, this is where normally you'd think to hunt here, here, and here. These are great looking spots, like perfect, it's like, pinch points.
Picture perfect, yeah.
Yeah. And you show up and there's somebody hunting there. And it's like, well, wait a minute. It's like these deer, it's like, and everyone else thinks the same thing. So these deer aren't going to be in these areas. So I said, okay, where the fuck would I not want to go? And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Right next to the parking lot, there's a fence over there. It's like there's like a little weird back thicket there, but it's real small. Let me go see what's in there. Sure enough, loaded with deer, and there was a buck bed that was in there. And it's just, and then I even, at one point, I talked to guys in the parking lot who they knew who I was. And we got talking back and forth, and I'm like, all right, guys, I'm not trying to blow up your spot. I'm probably not going to be hunting here much more. But just for shits and giggles, can you guys tell me, like, on a map, like, tell me where you've hunted? They had almost all hunted the same exact spots because
it looks like good deer country?
Yeah. So that's where it's like, when you start to, kind of think about it like that, it's like, well, wait a minute. These deer now have learned to not go to these areas and these spots. Because that's where other people hunt.
Ah, that's huge. Yeah, I mean, we don't have a huge amount of public land. No, I mean, I guess we do.
Yeah, we do. Yeah,
but it does. I feel like it doesn't get hunted hard. Like I feel like guys go in there, walk the trail, and go sit like on a stone wall, and just like it's not a huge.
But sometimes though, those can actually be really good spots because, as I said, the deer have learned, and all hunters, not all hunters, but a lot of hunters, they're typically going to do the same things. They're going to hunt the same spots, look for the same type of things.
Yeah.
So it's like you can go in there and you can be like, okay, well, these deer are now learned a behavior to avoid these hunters by doing this stuff. So you just
find that
outside
spot
the box and do something different, and boom, it all comes together.
Find that spot.
Happens.
So it almost makes it easier in one regard. It's like, because you just have to go against the grain.
Yep. Perfect. We're at an hour 20 right now. I just want you to, touch base or tell the story of the buck you tracked in Maine this year.
Okay.
Because I saw the videos of that, and I was like, oh, that's fucking awesome. I love tracking too, so that's my favorite.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think, tracking, is, for anyone who hasn't done it, obviously, it's something that I would say you got to experience it. I mean, because if,
absolutely.
I think Hal Blood said it best, right? It's like, you either love it or you hate it. I mean,
yeah, correct.
If you love going out, I mean, it's like did you guys see the video that Lee Libby did?
Yeah. No, it's fucking awesome.
I mean, I get goosebumps when I see that drone that pans up above the forest. You just watch him walking with his gun. He's just walking out into nothing, right?
Yeah.
And it's an adventure, and that's what I love about tracking. It's like, because it's just you going out into the woods, and I say find the biggest piece of friggin' woods that you can, and just send it. It's like you're just going out,
fucking send it.
Your truck till it's dark.
Gang, gang.
So, I mean, I'll start off, right? You know, it's like, you know, with like a fanny pack, it's like, you know, a bottle of water or 2 bottles. It's like, you know, a couple protein bars, and it's like I'm not planning on being gone all day long.
Yep.
And
I'm not
coming
coming
just
back.
An adventure. So that buck up in Maine, it's around, you know, my dad's cabin. We knew going into this year it was going to be a real hard year to try to find mature bucks, because the year before we had gotten a shit ton of snow. The deer they had yarded up early. They all go to winning areas up there, and they got hammered in the deer yard.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd heard all kinds of different numbers of mature bucks that got killed, but it wasn't good. I mean, they took a beating. So, so we had said going into the season it was going to be hard to try to find a mature buck. My dad, he works at Bath Iron Works. He takes the whole month of November off, and he goes up to camp, and he goes up there and hunts the whole month.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So he can usually locate, obviously, some giants. I mean, 'cause there's big 200-plus pounders up there, usually, you know, kind of all over the place. And so this year he hadn't found really, I think, more than a few tracks that were, you know, what we'd consider shooter bucks. So I knew it was going to be a tough year. I had gone up there after having, you know, a lot of success this season, you know, getting the 2 with a bow in New Hampshire, then the 1 with a muzzle loader. I was tagged out in New Hampshire, so I had some time. I went up to the cabin, and I did a preliminary kind of scouting trip. I usually take off, and I go up there on the night before Thanksgiving is when I drive up to camp. The last 3 days of rifle season, so Thanksgiving Day, that Friday, and then that Saturday is when rifle season ends in Maine. And then I plan on being there the next week for muzzleloader. The reason I choose that time frame is because in, you know, what I call kind of the bigger woods of Maine, these bigger bucks are going to start just going on their long journeys. They're going to start covering, you know, 10, 12 miles in a day.
Yeah.
They're just fucking wandering all over the place. So when I had gone up there, I wanted to, you know, scout some, you know, kind of new areas, check out, you know, some different spots where I hadn't really been before. I was checking out where I'd left some cameras all summer long. They weren't really, you know, showing, you know, what I'd hoped to see. My dad had been up there hunting. He wasn't seeing a lot. So I just happened to go, you know, to a different area and happened, you know, to cross this, you know, one brook and get into some woods that looked like they were a little more mature. They were a little more open because a lot of the stuff has been logged up there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So it's been cut. It's been, you know, some of it's, you know, they don't do a lot of clear cuts up there. A lot of it, you know, is select, you know, cuts.
Yeah.
But still, it grows back in thick as shit. It's like, so it's not really that good for tracking for the most part because you can't see, you know, down through the woods up in front.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So that was a couple weeks before. I had come back up the night before Thanksgiving and had the stars were aligning. In the forecast, we had snow that night, right?
Yeah.
So I got up to camp and I told my dad, I said, you know, since we're getting snow all night long, I had said, you know, when you get up in the morning, don't wake me up. Usually we get up at 2:30 in the morning.
Jeez.
We like to get up early, get everything settled. It's like head over to wherever we're going to hunt, get into the spot, get into the stand, you know, an hour before it gets light out, you know, and get settled in. But since it was snowing, I had said, well, I'm not going to go sit anywhere. I thought he was going to get up, you know, and go out and sit in one of the spots he had been hunting. So I had said, when you leave to go out, wake me up then I'll get up and get ready and, you know, start driving around looking for tracks. So I wake up and I'm looking around, you know, upstairs in the loft where the bed is, and it's friggin' daylight out. And I'm like, what the fuck?
What in the hell?
Yeah, and I'm like, this ain't right. And then I hear the recliner chair downstairs. I hear a creak of him rocking back and forth in it. I'm like, Dad, why the fuck didn't you wake me up? And of course, he's like, oh, I fell back asleep. He's like, I got up, and it was snowing so hard out. He's like, I'm not going to go over there and, you know, sit in the stand. You know, the first deep snow of the year,
right.
You don't move that much.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Moving in.
So he fell back asleep in the chair. Yeah. So then at that point, I get up and I'm scrambling, you know, to get my gear ready, and I already had my plan. And I told him the night before, he had said, you know, hey, Neil, what's your plan? I said, well, I'm just going to walk up and fucking shoot one. And he's like, no, really, what's your plan?
No.
I said, no, I'm
going to do that. Yeah, that seems the easiest.
I'm just going to walk up and fucking shoot one. It's like, have you seen the mountain deer guys?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so I had seen, you know, I had obviously seen the video that they did, the grunt buck, you know, just and then that's what they had said. Yeah, just walk up and shoot it. So I told my dad that, and so I got up, I drive out of camp, and I mean, the trees are just, you know, in all the camp roads, are just bent right over the roads.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful looking.
It's gorgeous. And I'm driving, through all these trees, and they're popping up out of the way. The snow's coming off them. And it's, a couple mile, drive over there. So I get to the spot where I wanted to go. At this point, it's got to be, 9:30. Park the truck, get all my gear situated. I'm running late. I walk down into this area where there's this brook. And I had started duct taping up, at the top of my boots. I don't know if you guys ever done that before.
I duct tape my woolies, because I wear my my wool pants over my boots.
Yeah, I wear them over too.
And I duct tape them to my rubber boots so they don't get all crispy with all that snowflake, when they get all balled up.
Yeah, so what I've started doing is I've started pulling them up higher. So I'll kind of pull them up so the bottom, of my pant leg is around the top of. I usually wear a lot of times lacrosse Grange boots.
Yeah.
I like the lacrosse Grange because they're a little bit more ankle fit, unlike Burleys or something, where it feels like to me you're not really stable.
Right.
The Grange are more narrow, kind of lighter boot. You can feel the ground underneath you a little better. So I'll pull them to the top of that boot, and then I'll tape them. At the bottom of my cuff at the top of the boot, and I tape the shit out of it real tight with duct tape. The reason I do that is when I come to a brook, you can walk through it. No water is going to get into it.
Right.
Yeah. I was going into water up to my thighs, and yeah, you would get through it, and your pants would be a little wet. But if you're boogieing through that brook or that river, it's not going to get your feet wet really.
Right. Yeah. Right. None of that matters.
So I get to that brook, and I'm like, all right, shit, I got to friggin' send it through here. So I, truck through the brook. I get to the other side, and I was planning on coming up to this old tote road and going to the left to where those more mature woods were. And when I got to that old tote road, I looked over to the right, and I happened to see, a track come across it. So I said, let me go investigate and see what the track is. Well, I get up to it, and it happens to be a coyote track. Well, shit.
Oh, shit, huh?
I'm like, well, I planned on going to the left, and I'm debating, and I'm like, well, should I go ahead and keep going and see what's up this tote road, or should I go back down, and go the direction that I planned on? I said, fuck it. I'll just keep going. I'm already going this direction.
Yeah.
So I walk up probably about a half a mile further, and just when I'm about ready to turn around and cut into the woods, I come to where there was this probably old landing area. And this is a real grown-in tote road. It's like a four-wheeler path at this point almost.
Yeah.
It's so grown in. And I come to where there's old landing on the side of it, and I see a set of tracks go across it. And I said, let me go up and see what those are. Sure enough, I walk up, nice buck track. And there was a pretty good amount of snow, so I couldn't tell. But by looking at the stride length, I said, okay, this looks like it's a borderline shooter. I said, it looks like it could be, as low as 175, 180 pounds. It could be up to 220. I can't really tell because, the way it's kind of, filled in with snow out in the open.
Yeah.
But it's fresh, so I friggin' hop on it. I start going. I go probably about a half a mile, and I could see that it looked like it was a pretty good size hoof. I mean, not giant, but I figured it was right around 200 pounds. And it's zigzagging all over the place right off the bat. And I said, okay, this finally.
Feeding?
Was that?
Like feeding zigzagging, or just like?
It didn't look like it was actually feeding.
Moseying.
But it wasn't going in a straight line.
Right.
Kind of, go this way and then
go
back
between.
Yeah,
way.
he's not chasing a doe then. Yeah.
And usually this time of year, I never see that. It's usually just a straight line, and
right.
they don't friggin' stop.
Yep.
So when I saw that, I said, all right, well, this is what I'm looking for. And it comes up to this one little kind of opening between these these little hills. It's these little knobs. And there was an opening between it where the trees kind of opened up, and I saw that buck had come out, and he'd walked around this one tree 5 or 6 times. And when I get over to that tree, and I'm trying to sort out, okay, which direction does this track go? Oh, there's an older track that comes and, goes up that direction.
Yeah,
and I'm trying to sort it out. And I said, oh, fuck. I said, he backtracked where I walked in. He came back the same direction, but he went, kind of parallel to it, but off to the side where the tracks came in.
Yeah.
And when I turned around, the reason I said, oh, fuck, is I looked at that little knoll. That's exactly where his tracks were headed to. And I said, I bet what he did is he came out, meandered around so he could walk up on that little hill so he could bed down and look
down. See everything coming.
Knowing if anyone followed his backtrack. Yeah. So I'm like, shit, he was just watching me, stumble around trying to figure out and sort out these tracks.
Walk around this tree for 6 hours.
Yeah, right? So I fucking start up the hill, and sure enough, I see, a big bare spot in the snow. Yeah. There's his bed, and you see running tracks bounding out of it.
Yeah.
I saw so many of those this year. It's not even funny.
I know.
Well, so that's one thing that I'm still, learning on from all the guys that I talked to, they're real successful at tracking. They said, they always say, if I could have learned when I was younger just to slow down and know when and when to put the brakes on, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, so at that point he's running, and I said, okay, it's game on, right? Now he knows. Like, I mean, he may not known of what it was, but he knows there could be something in pursuit. I said,
right.
So this could lead to an all day, me chasing him. At least I'm on a buck now. So at this point, he's headed back now towards that tote road that I had kind of walked in on. So I said, if he's headed back towards it, let me scoot down and pop out a couple hundred yards down the tote road, the direction he was going. But so if he's going, let's say, off to the left, I'm going to go back to the right on the tote road. And so I come out in the tote road. My hope was I'd pop out into it and I'd walk up it, and he'd be standing in it looking back in the woods waiting for me to come out to it.
Exactly, yeah.
But no such luck.
Yeah.
I come out to the tote road, I walk up it, and sure enough, he ran out to it, and then he ran down the tote road probably about 50, 60 yards, and then he started walking, and he cut off into the woods. So I start up into the woods, and I look up this little hill, and I said, all right, he's probably going to be right at the top of this hill.
You still on his track?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, you're still on him. Okay.
So when I came out to the tote road, I came out to it. I walked up it, and then I saw where he came out into it. He bound down the tote road, probably 6-7 leaps, and then he started walking down it, and then he cut off to the side.
So he's slowing back up.
Yeah. So he was already walking again, and he's going up this like hill. I could kind of look up the hill, and I said, all right, and it's all softwood, so I'm looking up into hemlock and spruce. And I said, he's probably going to be at the top of this little knoll looking down on his back trail, because we started walking already, and I waited. I guess that's the one part that I left out. Is after I jumped him out of his bed, I waited probably 20 minutes probably.
Okay.
Like you hear, I'm trying to start executing the stuff that you hear from the people.
Oh, yeah.
Right,
no,
yeah.
Of course. You're putting it into work, yeah.
I mean, if I'd had a sandwich, I probably would have sat down and ate it at that point. It's like you always hear,
Right.
do something to occupy yourself. Right?
Yeah.
So I go and I start up that hill, and I'm trying to go slow, and I'm easing my way up there, and I get to the top of it, and nope, he's not there. He's still walking, and it is a little flat, and then it starts back up this another little knob, and I'm coming up it, and it's spruce and hemlock, and as I start making my way up it, I can look kind of up ahead, probably 30, 40 yards. It's kind of thick, green growth. I'm looking up through this spruce, and all of a sudden I look, and there he is, standing right there, broadside. And I just, see the turn of the rack of the horns that he has. And
shit.
I mean, he didn't have super tall tines, but it was thick main beams.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking up, so I'm not seeing the thickness of the rack. I'm just seeing, the kind of beams. They almost look like they go out.
Yeah.
I don't see the hoops that hook in. It just looks like a beam that kind of goes out. And I see that, and I said, well, he looks like he's at least 180 pounds. I said, at this point, he's right broadside. And so I go and I pull up, and this is the first time I've ever hunted with like a kind of an AR type style platform rifle.
Yeah.
I have it's a Sig Sauer 716 DMR Gen 2. So it's essentially like an AR-10 almost. It's a 308 caliber.
308. Yeah, that's what I'm going to ask.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I have a scope on it. So I pull up on it, and I have him in the scope. And at this point, like there's one little blur of a branch, like in the scope, kind of in the sight picture.
Right.
And I see that, and I said, I can't touch it off because I don't know, if I'm going to hit that branch or not. I don't know if it's close to me or close to
a red
him.
dot, or are you running? What are you running for a scope on that?
So it was a Sig Sauer Whiskey 5.
So that's a red dot scope
power?
though.
It's a 3x15 actually.
Okay.
15.
So I had it on 3 power though.
Yeah, right.
And the thing that I love about it, I don't know if you guys have ever, shot or looked through a scope that has so it has crosshairs, but in the middle of the crosshairs it has like a little red dot.
Yeah.
Yep. I have. Yep.
Oh, I freaking love it because for quick, like target acquisition, your eye just goes to that little red dot in the center of the crosshairs.
Yeah. Pick it up and pull.
Yep. So at that point, I picked it up. I'm on him, and I'm seeing that one little teeny branch. So I said, "Oh shit!" I said, "Let me just go up on my tippy toes to see if I can get over it." So I got the gun shoulder. I kind of go up my tippy toes to look up over that branch. I said, "Yep, I don't see that blur in the scope anymore." I said, "So I should be good. I should be clear of it." And I go ahead and touch it off, and I see him just hump right up. And at this point, he must have turned while I'm trying to get resituated from broadside to kind of almost quartering towards me, almost facing me.
Yeah.
Because when I saw him kind of hump up, he was more facing me at this point versus right broadside. And my head is just ringing at this point. I mean, because the muzzle brake that's on the end of this thing.
Yeah.
Holy shit, gives you a headache.
The best way I can describe it is, like when you watch a movie and there's the battlefield, like
yeah.
bomb goes off.
Just it's like
yeah.
blank.
Yeah. That deafening report is going like through my ears at this point.
Yeah.
And he turns and he starts running almost towards me, like off my left-hand side. He's coming off this knoll, barreling down towards me, and he runs by me probably about 10 yards off to my left. And at this point, I mean, I'm pointing the gun at him, but my head's ringing so bad. I'm like, I don't want to shoot this freaking gun again. I'm like, fuck that.
Fuck that. Hopefully I hit him.
I mean, I knew I'd hit him. I mean, when I saw him freaking hump up, I'm like, I knew I freaking walloped him pretty good. So at that point, I'm like, nah, fuck it. And so he ran by me, and I heard him kind of go, crashing by me. And so I said, okay, well, let me walk up to where I shot. So instead of walking, 10 yards off to my left, I just walked up to the top of the knoll where I shot. I walk up there and I start following it down. And then, I mean, he only probably went, I don't know, past me. He probably only ran another 30 yards past where I was standing. So he had come the 40 yards from the top of the knoll, cruised by me. And as I'm walking down, I'm not seeing any blood in the snow. But I'm like, I don't know. It's like it friggin' happened so quick. I mean, he covered that span in, all 2 seconds.
Right, two jumps, and he's yeah, exactly.
So I'm seeing his dig marks going through. I'm not really seeing any blood in the snow. And then finally I see just a little bit of blood in the snow, and I look up, and the first thing I saw was a spruce tree that was, I mean, I don't know, about the thickness of your thigh around, decent spruce, not huge. And he went head first into that spruce. You see where his head smashed into it, and the bark on the spruce tree was all ripped off fresh, like where his head, we plowed into it head first into that spruce tree.
Holy shit.
And then that catches my eye. You see his tracks run right into it. And then on the back side of it, you could see where he'd hit it head first. He had spun around and then fell down and was underneath the blow-down tree, like where his head's underneath the blow-down right there. Yeah.
Wow.
And so at that point, I mean, because it was just, moments after it happened, you can see his kind of chest still rising a little bit. But then you could tell, I mean, at that point, it stopped, and I came up to him, and he was dead. And I'm like, holy shit. I grab a hold of his rack and pull him out, and I said, yeah, he feels like he has a little bit of weight to him. I text my dad, and you know what the text said?
What?
Sometimes just gotta fucking walk up and shoot him.
Yeah.
And he's like, get the fuck out. He's like, come on.
No, I'm serious. Sometimes you just gotta walk up and shoot him.
That's fucking awesome.
That was awesome. And so, yeah, that one weighed 209 pounds. So that was a nice buck. And, I mean, the cool part about that whole thing was not only then, texting my dad, talking to him on the phone.
Oh, yeah.
But then when we came to try to figure out, the extraction mission of how do we get him out, because it was probably almost 2 miles from where I crossed that brook to where you could get like a 4-wheeler to.
Wow.
I mean, I was exactly on the track from when I had cut his track to where I killed him. It was exactly 1.00 miles on Onyx.
Wow.
Because I turned on the track from when I cut his track on Onyx to where I killed him was exactly a mile.
Yeah.
Sure.
So and then I met up with my dad. We said, okay, well, to get him out, we should probably grab a plastic sled to make for easier dragging because it's going to be a hard drag, through the snow. So at this point, we were going to go back to camp, but he didn't have a sled back at the cabin. So we said, okay, we'll drive back into town. Everything's closed this Thanksgiving Day, but hopefully we'll find somebody at someone's house
that has a
plastic sled. Yeah, I mean,
start knocking on doors.
Every person has a jet sled, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So as we're driving out on the logging roads, we bumped into our buddy Brian, and he was parked on the side of the road making a cell phone call, and sure enough, sticking out of the bed of his truck right beside his 4-wheeler is a big black plastic sled.
Jet sled.
So we pull up, and of course, he knows if we're out of the woods at this point. He knows one of us got
dead.
Yeah.
So I pulled up, and I was like, hey, we're going to have to commandeer your sled there in the back if you don't mind. And so he came with us, and that was probably, the coolest thing is, it's like, having, Brian there, he's a good friend of ours. It's like my dad, all as part of the recovery mission. And then the video that you guys have seen is Brian, he waited because he has some bad back problems.
Yeah.
So my dad and I went across the brook with a sled, got the buck, dragged it, that 1.5 miles or 2 miles back to the brook. And then Brian was waiting for us on the opposite side with a 4-wheeler. So when we got up to the brook, I yelled over to Brian, and he started recording us as me and my dad take the buck across the river and wade through, it's like,
awesome.
the brook coming across. So that was,
that's
I mean, that's just footage too, that it's like, you have these experiences, but they captured on video, me and my dad trudging through that brook, walking across the water, dragging that buck.
You can talk about it all day long, but to actually have the footage of it, that's something different.
Making
that's
memories.
Awesome.
Yeah. So that was the main hunt. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate it. We're at an hour and 40 minutes. I guess.
Yeah, this is definitely something different with everything going on. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say we didn't talk about that.
Crazy.
Yeah. Bear with us, everybody that's listening. I hope it comes out all right. And
yeah.
I want to thank Neil.
Yeah, because this is the first in-person interview you guys have done, right?
Yeah. I hope
so,
if it comes out like shit, then I hope you still listen. And if it comes out good, then that's good.
You know what? There's good. If you can understand, it's good content. There's a lot of tips.
No.
That's fine.
This is the only thing we can do. I know.
Yeah, that's the only thing we can do for now.
Neil reached out to me early this week, and was like, hey, I don't think it's going to work out. And I was going to text him that night anyways because my wife works in healthcare and just doesn't make sense. So this is going to be the new norm for a while. So hopefully it works out and we'll get better at it. But Neil, I appreciate you coming on, and we're going to come on hopefully before
this summer.
Before bow season.
Get together, get a bunch of
in
guys
person. That'd be sweet.
We just all shoot the shit and have a cookout. We got a new recorder set up so we can hook up a shitload of mics now to it. So
that'd be cool.
I mean, obviously, it's like I'm glad we still got a chance to do it. I mean, I was pumped to come up, and hopefully have a chance to meet you guys in person. Now you guys said you were going to invite some other people over too, and I was looking forward to getting a group together and just sitting around talking about hunting. But I mean, obviously, hopefully, we made it work. Doing this with we're all sitting here,
everybody's
on FaceTime right now.
Yeah, this is the way we got to do it now. So I appreciate the time. And
where can everyone find you?
Yeah, so anyone can look me up on Facebook. That's where I'm most active. Neil Pendleton. Just look me up there. I started an Instagram not too long ago. That's Pendleton Persistence. So I do put some content on Instagram, but I'd say shoot me a message on Facebook. I'm open really. I get messages from guys all across the country asking for advice, and I try to get back to everyone. I love giving advice, talking hunting, and through answering questions, I learn a lot too, just sparking up conversations and, guys playing scenarios behind me. So at any time, don't hesitate to reach out to me, anyone that's listening. So
that's awesome, man. That's awesome. You do that for the public. And
well, we appreciate it for sure.
The passion that everyone's got for this sport. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's where I say, it's having the passion, having, the persistence, and all that type of stuff. It's like between those things, it's like that's what, is going to keep driving you to put in the extra effort and time and then eventually reap the benefits. So
absolutely. Well, cool. All right, well, we're going to call it here. I'm going to press stop on this recorder, and then I'll say goodbye to you guys.
All right. Well,
all right.
Thanks again, Neil.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, baby, when we're together, it's like Vegas times 3. But in the morning I'll know better, 'cause you're so bad for me. Just like a sip of wine leads me to drink. You're my gateway drug. I'm starting to think it's gonna take much more than just 12 steps. So call Betty Ford, call Dr. Drew, save me a bed, 'cause in a month or two I wanna quit you, girl, just not yet. Yeah, baby, when we're together, you're the only drug I need. But in the morning I'll know better, 'cause you're so bad for me. Barreling down the road past these city lights, you got your hands on the wheel, a look in your eye. I ask myself, is it time to slow down? But the night's still young, we're full of gas, credit cards in my pocket with some limit left, and we got friends in the next town. Yeah, baby, when we're together, it's like Vegas times 3. so bad for me. Yeah, oh baby, when we're together, it's like Vegas times 3. But in the morning I'll know better, 'cause you're so bad for me. Oh, 'cause you're so bad for me. 'Cause you're so bad for me. So bad.